Okay, call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Beartu? Here. Mr. Gorbett?
Here.
Mrs. Laird? Mr. Price?
Here.
Ms. Ray? Here.
Approve or amend and sign the minutes of the regular meeting held June 14th, 2021. We have a motion to approve.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Ray,
Second.
second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any questions or concerns regarding the minutes? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Beartu? Yes. Mr. Price?
Abstain.
Ms. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbett?
Yes. Okay. Any walkout items?
Yes, ask Mr. Gorbeck. So we do actually have 3 different items. I put them at your place. I apologize. It's that time of year. You know, there's a quick hustle in the personnel world, and also then Megan's got one. So the one page is personnel matters. It'll be items 6 and 7. We already have items 6 and 7 on our agenda. Item 6 was a late resignation that I actually got this morning. And then item 7 are 2 hires that we just finalized after we sent out the agenda. So I'd like to add item 6 and item 7, just those 3. And then Megan has one, item 15 for a financial. It'll be approval of a temporary appropriations that we'd ask you to walk on this evening. So it'll be item 6, item 7, and item 15. Item 15 is an additional item, so it's after 14. Luckily, it's at the end of the agenda, so nothing changes on the numbering.
Okay. Alrighty. Superintendent's report.
Well, not much report tonight since we have a work session, but I just want to thank the board for their flexibility. It's that time of year, you know, July 10th is the kind of cutoff for all teachers to get out of the contracts. So we've still got a couple shuffles. You can see a late resignation. So there'll be a few more things to act on, but I appreciate you allowing me to walk those things on. Other than that, we're going to allow the rest of the evening for our work session, which I think you will be excited about.
Okay, we're going to forego our legislative liaison report.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do the
We're going to do the work
recommendations.
session.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
All right. Thank you. The big part of our school, the part of our school is teaching. And there's been a lot of discussion around the country about curriculum and what is taught. And even as a board, we've been handling questions about those kinds of things. So actually with Mr. Gorbetz's request and our certainly willingness to provide the information, we'd like to talk about curriculum tonight, really. And our curriculum plan. I'm not going to get too far out in front of the horse, right? I brought the expert with me, and I know when to shut up because I'm married. So I'm going to let Denise, if you would, from your place there. Denise is obviously our curriculum director, and she's going to walk us through, and I think there's materials at your place there where you can follow along, and I'll let her go, and I may put in my 2 cents now and then. But Denise, thank you for coming. If you could go ahead and begin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Detweiler. Good evening, President Gorbetz, board members, Ms. Parkhurst. I appreciate the opportunity to bring to you this evening the curriculum management plan. The CQCC committee has spent the majority of this school year revising and reviewing all of the pieces and parts of this plan. And it is very comprehensive. At your seat, you have a draft pending your approval this evening, as well as a yellow document, which allows you to see the timeline that we put forth and the topics that we hit, who ran point on those in the order.
Sorry.
So I want to go back just a little bit for you and then be able to come forward. The curriculum management plan was first introduced to our district in 2007. My predecessor, Mrs. Lori Godfrey, who was the director of curriculum at the time, and our superintendent at the time, Dr. Tracy McCaughty, designed the original curriculum management plan, wrote that, and brought that into our district. After 2007, on its initial board approval, it was reviewed in 2011 and again in 2014. So it's a document that we continually look at and review. We were on the schedule to review that last year, and COVID happened. So like most other things, they got set aside. And so it became the work of the curriculum committee for this year. Between November of 2020 and May of 21, the committee met on a monthly cycle, and after our additional, with whatever regular business we had that we would come before the committee, we had assigned and broken down topics and key components of the CQ or of the CMP that would be reviewed. It was an incredible review process. We have a very extensive committee. The board subcommittee of CQCC is made up of our higher education peers, parents, community members, administration from both the district and the buildings, teachers from every grade level, every level within the district. So it's a very comprehensive group. And all of our members would be prepared ahead of time. They knew the order and which topics and which concepts were going to be reviewed. They would spend time during the month having conversation with their peers at their level, and then we would all come back together and be able to have a very collaborative conversation. And so with that process, we were able to hit many stakeholders. We had a lot of input. We had a lot of hearty conversations, as my board members that sit on the committee will be able to tell you. Some very good bantering back and forth, and very good opportunity to really look at things from different perspectives, and also be able to update and make sure that we were being reflective of our board's mission and vision statements. On the yellow document that you have in front of you, if you look to the right-hand column, what I did for you here is just add in some of those key revision areas. So you can see that we wanted to make sure that the entire document was aligned to our current mission and vision statements. We changed definitions that are current in our strategic plan that maybe had changed since the 2014 revision. We added concepts and word changes that were impactful from the state level, such as Ohio learning standards instead of new learning standards, or Ohio and state standards, because we do have some of, national standards, because we do have some of those that play. So you can kind of see where some of those revisions, those key pieces land. And as we walk through the document tonight, I'll highlight some of those areas for you. And please don't hesitate to stop me if you have a question or if you would like to hear more about a particular area. To provide you some background when it comes to curriculum and standards, I wanted to take the opportunity just to, again, kind of go back to the state level and bring that forward as to how that gets integrated into a local district. The curriculum management plan allows us common language throughout the district and allows the district to have strong process in how we roll through making the decisions that impact curriculum and instruction. In the state of Ohio, each public district is held to teach the learning standards that are adopted by the State Board of Education. The Ohio Department is regularly revising those standards. They're constantly looking at those standards, and then they share those changes with the local districts once those revisions have been board adopted at the state level.
I might add too, Denise, that I'll regularly get emails from ODE saying, here's your opportunity, here's your window for comment. So they literally do send emails out to the state, all across the state, saying, okay, we're about to redo math. Let's hear what you have. So I do know there's a lot of feedback, opportunity for feedback.
And very much so. And we have many teachers and parents within our community that jump on board. One of our members of our CQCC, Sarah Lewis, represented our parent group at the state level this year and was part of a revision cycle. Scott Havis at the high school level has been integral in some of the changes with biology standards and the biology state test. We currently have one of our kindergarten teachers that just a week ago was selected to be part of the first round of the dyslexia pieces, the changes that are coming, because it will start in kindergarten and intervention. So that is we are very fortunate in Fremont to have staff members, community members that participate and jump in. Number one, it allows our voice from Fremont, Ohio. And number two, it really allows us sometimes an insight. And we get to see things sometimes sooner than they're released all the way through across the state. And it's good for us to get a jump start and take a look at some of those items. So we're very fortunate, I believe. Once the state board has made those adoptions, then they give those back to local districts. At that time, it is always the responsibility of the local district to embed those standards into their teaching and learning. In Fremont City Schools, all of those standards begin with our curriculum guides. And this is our approved standards for that content and that specific grade level. In Fremont, a curriculum guide also includes the state-adopted model curriculum, which allows for enrichment and intervention, what comes before that learning, what comes after that learning. We also include a teacher-driven pacing guide of the standards. This helps our teachers know approximately how long should I spend on that standard and in what order do we want to teach the standards. That pacing guide is extremely important in our community when we have such a high mobility level and we have elementary students that may participate in more than one elementary building in a year. By following that pacing guide, it allows a better chance of success for learning for our students.
If I may, Denise, just speaking from experience, I started at Otis in 6th grade. I remember it was so frustrating sometimes this is back in 1991, so it's been a little while, but so frustrating sometimes when I'd get a student from across town from another elementary school, and as I'm teaching my science lesson, they'd say, well, we'd already did that. We've already done that, or, because the buildings weren't aligned as to kind of when you were teaching what. So this pacing guide, I think, is a crucial part. And our mobility rate is almost 50%. It's not uncommon for me to sit down and talk to some students at lunchtime and say, well, which school did you start at? Or where have you? And very rarely is the one that, well, I started here and finished here. It just doesn't happen very often. So at least half or more are mobile between elementaries. Now, hopefully that'll be better now that we're in 4 instead of 7. Mm-hmm. I hope that will be better. It's always better for students to be in one building. But that pacing guide is a huge part of our success in elementary school, just because we have so many buildings and so many scenarios.
Our curriculum guides also attempt to align what is being taught to the current text, to our primary instructional resource that is board approved. We also complete locally created assessments that our teachers at every grade level and content area create. And then those are shared within the curriculum guide so that they have opportunity to immediately work with each other. And then finally, within our curriculum guide, we also try to include a list of supplemental materials that have been approved by our CQCC committee in order to enhance those teaching and learning areas. There is typically a gap between the standards that we are held to teach and the board-approved textbook material that we have purchased. And there's many times there's a gap in between those pieces. So our teachers work very hard to find reliable and positive supplemental materials that again come through this review process that I'll share in a minute with you. And then once those are approved and vetted, then we share that back with all of the teachers at that grade level or that content area. So if one teacher has done magical work to find a great resource, then we make sure that that is shared with all of the teachers at that grade level and content area.
And that is vetted for appropriateness and everything else.
Exactly.
Denise,
aligned to the standards and the depth of knowledge.
Right. Would you say in your experience too that typically some of those textbook companies follow some of the larger states with that curriculum so it matches better? And sometimes the smaller states end up trying to, we develop our own curriculum, but then the textbook may not line up as well as it would if we were from Texas or California, basically.
Agree.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, our textbook companies, they'll tell us that they have Ohio versions for everything. But that's part of our review process, is making sure when the teachers come through part of this vetting process through CQCC, we align the standards, the Ohio standards that our teachers are held to teach. And then the teacher who's bringing that textbook, or the group of teachers that are bringing that textbook, part of their review process is sitting down with that material and finding in that textbook where that standard is taught and how that standard is taught and at what level it's taught. And you'll see in the paperwork that I asked them for the evidence. What page did you find that on? What did that look like? Because we want to be good stewards of our dollars and make sure that we're purchasing the best materials that we can. The curriculum management plan is designed to be one of those structural documents of the district. As Mr. Detweiler said, we are in the business of teaching children. This is what we do. And I know I'm a little biased because I'm the director of curriculum, but I truly believe that everything we do in this district should come back to focus around curriculum and instruction. This is the business we are in. The document is very holistic, and it provides guidance to the written, taught, and tested curriculum that is provided to all students in our district, pre-kindergarten through grade 12. The processes that are involved in the curriculum management plan are, they provide security to our staff, oversight to our materials, including software applications, textbooks, and supplemental materials. And the process ends with providing you a quality recommendation for purchase and adoption. I'd like to get into your document just to review a few pieces with you. If you would please turn to page 21. This is the curriculum development cycle. This is the planning. This page on page 21 with that development cycle provides us evidence of the alignment to the standards, helps us see the relevance to what we are held to teach by law, how much time we should spend on that, what those true concepts should be, and then we know that we have board-approved primary instructional resources, those textbooks, and we know that we have supplemental materials. It is through this development cycle that we come up with new courses. This is where an idea comes from a staff member, sometimes a group of students. We've developed classes through my department that have started with students at the high school level that said, you know what, I wish I could learn more about that. Okay, let's see. How do we do that? What does that look like? What are the standards? And it's through this development cycle that we would run that through. So most recently, a couple of examples for that process. This year, we brought Intro to Business. It will be a new class that will be taught in the fall. That came through CQCC in full process, was approved in December when we looked at our new courses, is in our course description guide. We've been working very closely with AJ Malo. He will be the instructor in the fall. We've been writing that curriculum this spring. We will finish that up in the summer and purchasing the book, if you so choose this evening, and moving into a new class. So we're excited for that. Classes such as Healthy Cuisine was a class that came through this process recently. Our World War II history class, that was a class that started with interest of students in conversation with their high school history teachers that said, can't you just go more in depth on that? Tell me more about that. Oh, I would if I had time, but we got to cover all this. This is world history. I have to do that. And it was that reflection that brought that teacher back to this process and to this committee and said, do you think we could have a semester class just on World War II history? Yeah, we could do that. That would be great. Let's see if there's interest. Let's develop the class. And so we've ran through this process, and we've added some very hearty options for our students to be learners with. Question? Yes.
Yes. Haven't we had business classes in the past when I was at Ross? So what are those different from what is being or has been developed recently?
We have had a fundamental business class in the past. It's a little more dated. It's a little bit more traditional. lower level, entry level class for some of our students. This class, this Intro to Business class, is being modeled after one of our Bowling Green State University courses that we have taught in the past. It will be much more up to date. The material that we'll be using is actually all virtual. It comes to us all electronic. There's not a text, and it changes on a very regular basis as teachers will be able to, or the teachers that are using the material will come ready all the time.
So there is not a textbook, you're saying?
There is a textbook. I'm sorry, there is a textbook, but it has a very strong electronic component.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. If you would then flip for me to page 43.
I have a question.
Yes.
And it might be later.
That's
so
okay.
How do you, you mentioned how a new class can get started. So how do you decide a class is not an interest anymore? Is there a cycle that goes through?
Great question. The first telltale sign for us will be students not making the request upon scheduling. And our counselors at the high school level have a really good feel for the student population and in their conversations. And very honestly, we survey our students when it's time. We survey them before we begin the creation of the class, because we also try to be fiscally responsible to that. If we don't have enough students interested in the class, then it's hard to maintain that in our schedule and to assign that to our teachers. So we use that survey with students really on both sides of that. Would you be interested in the class if we offered it? If we came up with this class? And are we going to continue to offer this? Or who wants to take this class? What does that look like?
Denise, if I may too, and stop me in my tracks if I'm wrong, but most of these courses we're talking about are on the elective side of the schedule. I mean, there's the core driven curriculum. Okay. So there's still the 4 cores, and we're doing those things. There are things we have to offer, but it's almost a supply and demand situation. So if we have an art class that's maybe a high 3rd year kind of art class, and the numbers for that art class just keep going down, we start looking. Okay, look, we've only had 3 kids sign up for this. Where else can we go with this? So that's when it sort of triggers that conversation with the teacher. Okay, what do you think they might sign up for? Or, so that's typically what those are. They're on the elective side. So that helps us. And usually it's driven solely by demand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
On page 43 and 44, this is the material evaluation rubric. And this is all of the rubrics and all of the evaluation systems were updated as part of our review process this year. A couple of key areas were continuity of language and really looking closely at the biases that sometimes come into play, and making sure that we had some very specific language built into these evaluation rubrics so that we were looking very closely throughout. This rubric is used for new textbooks and primary sources. It includes a review of the organization. We want to make sure that those materials are well organized, easy to use with students, easy to use by teachers. We need to make sure that they're aligned to the standards. We are held to teach the Ohio Learning Standards or the national standards that Ohio adopts. We want to make sure that the material, the textbook, is also aligned to the depth of knowledge level of the standard. If the standard is asking for our students to synthesize and apply and to create,
Analyze, yeah.
we want to make sure that those materials that we're using with our students align to that very same level. If the textbook material seems very lower level and it's all literal and remembering and students can just read and respond quickly and be done, but we know that when they're tested, they're going to have to do all of these other upper level things, then that may not be the textbook for us. We want to make sure that the textbook we're using is aligned to where they're going to need to show mastery. Examples of this process are here this evening. Back here on the side table are the textbooks that the committee is bringing for recommendation to the board this evening for this school year. Primarily, you're going to see some history things at the high school level, but the paperwork that our teachers have put forth has come before our CQCC committee, has met approval there. You'll see on the agenda later this evening we're recommending for you to approve so that we would move forward with that. The
Denise,
next,
if I may, and
yes.
I just wanted to point out, I know this has kind of been what's in the news all over the country, is on page 43, actually on page 44, if you turn the back, item number 20. And I think at Fremont, we've got to jump on things because we're a very diverse community. But one of the keys part of that is, does it cover our entire culture? I mean, are we asking critical questions? Are we covering points of view? Are we doing those kinds of things? And I think we do a fabulous job of that. But I just want to point that out, that it is a part of our process. It's vetted through this form, and that's number 18, 20, and even number 9 on the front, real world applications. And are they relevant? I mean, it doesn't take long to know what's relevant right now in the world, right? So all those things are talked about during the process. Thank you, Denise.
And even looking at that the language of real world application, and again, bringing that right back to our mission and vision statement and making sure that the committee really did go back and forth and want to make sure that we were bringing those key items into our review process. I thought that was very important. The supplemental materials request is on page 45, 46. It just follows right along for you. This is completed by a staff member when teachers want to bring an additional item for approval. This could be software application. This could be, we've done this with Scholastic News. We've done this with an additional item that the teacher feels would greatly meet their standards, and it matches up to an area where we have that gap. This is the standard we are held to teach, and to teach it at this level. And maybe this is just one of those areas that the textbook does an okay job. And the teachers have identified that, so then they look to find, what else can I use here to make sure that I'm meeting the standard at the level that I need to be meeting that at. This is the form that they would fill out. This comes before CQCC. The guests come in, they do a presentation, they give us their rationale, they show it to us. We've had presentations that walk us through the software application. Many times they'll have already tried like a trial and they have a sample that they're using. They'll talk to us about that, if they've collected any data along the way. And then our guest instructor leaves and our committee discusses, and we banter back and forth, and we determine if this meets our needs and is this a good use of district dollars, and is this something that we'd like to move forward with. So this allows our teachers to fill in the gaps. It also allows us to make sure that we are not only vetting, but when we're approving, and if we're going to use those district dollars to support those pieces of learning, we want to make sure that we're filling that hole. So the supplemental material request has become used quite a lot. You'll see, and I know that you guys get those meeting minutes every month, and you'll see many times that guest or the supplemental materials request was discussed and approved, or maybe we send it back to them and ask them to, that maybe in conversation we found a free version that we feel does the same thing. We might ask our teacher to go back and play with that for a while and see if that really meets their needs, because then we like free. Miss Ray.
I have sat in on this the committee and have seen teachers bring in things. Okay, question.
Yeah.
So for that level, again, you mentioned that there's a sharing across the board. So if this teacher has something that really, really works, or really, she thinks it's awesome, that's shared with the grade level. Okay. Are they required to adopt it, or is it
It sometimes depends on the amount of dollars attached.
okay?
Because we do want to be good stewards. And we also sometimes will have the teachers who are bringing that pilot that for a year or two, will gain some more data. I always ask them sometimes to come back and share with me. And when I email them to say that your request has been approved, please plan on sharing with me at the end of the year as to how this worked for you and what you had. If we feel that this is an integral piece,
Okay.
then we want to take it a step further, and then we want to make sure that it maybe becomes part of the curriculum guide and not a resource in the curriculum guide.
but there's an opportunity for them to try. And okay.
Definitely. And we share that out so that they, and they talk to each other and they'll, hey, that person got this. Can I try that? Yeah, you want to try that? We could try that. The next item on page 47 that you have is the curriculum evaluation rubric. And I know that the language sounds very similar. And again, you will see the same components that we want to check and vet through. The curriculum evaluation rubric is used once a curriculum guide is written. So I will give you heads up that intro to business will come to you early in the fall, the new course that we'll be teaching. And that curriculum guide will come for board approval. And we look at those same areas of, is it organized? Is it user-friendly? Does it include assessments that my teacher can use? Is it aligned to the standards? Whether those be state standards or national standards, where does that fall? So we want to make sure that we have a solid document. The majority of our curriculum guides are all electronic now. They used to be in binders. You remember we had a binder for everything, Miss Ray. Many of those are all electronic, and which actually makes it very nice because they're shared docs. They're shared folders in Google, and it makes it very, very easy to share with our intervention specialist and our bilingual paras and whoever else is needing those pieces. So that's a plus. Continuing on page 49, professional development falls into the curriculum management plan. And that is an area that is driven by two board policies, GCL, which is the professional development opportunities, and GCLR, the regulation. That policy and regulation actually mandates quite a lot of pieces and parts for professional development in our district. One of those key components is if the district is going to tie dollars to professional development, is the professional development that is being requested aligned to the district and building work plans? Are we having teachers attend or staff members attend professional development that increases their knowledge of the job they need to do, the job that you've hired them to do? And is with part of this request process that helps first their immediate supervisor determine that, and then those documents come to my office as the designee to the superintendent, and then it goes on to the superintendent. And so along the way, you have multiple levels vetting that out and determining, does it align? Is this going to make us better? Who's going to pay for it? How much does it cost? Where's the funding coming from? Megan likes to have all those details all answered ahead of time. And then there's also pieces in the policy that help us determine if it's a national conference, how often a staff member can go, or how many staff members at a time could attend one conference. Because again, we want to be good fiscal agents, and we want to encourage our staff members to share information and to be collaborative. So this matrix helps our staff see and follow quickly right along with what's my process and where do I go and what comes next. Following next on page 52 or 51, 52 is the report card process. Again, this kind of comes at the other end of curriculum development, but we have board policy that mandates that we communicate with our families and our stakeholders and our parents about grades and academic achievement and making sure that we have all of those pieces in place. The revision process for report card allows us to make sure that we are involving our stakeholders, that we are aligned to the standards that we're held to teach. It ensures that we are communicating with our families. And it also, it ensures our participation. So it mandates that we have teachers involved in this review process. It keeps everyone knowledgeable. And usually this is a pretty big committee when we get this going so that we can make sure that everything is being covered. It's been 2 years, I think, since we reviewed the elementary report card and realigned it to standards-based instruction. And it was a big piece. So that's an important document that comes through there. Any questions so far? I've covered a lot of pieces and parts.
Okay, how have the standards changed over, say, years? Is that
They do change. The layout changes, the topic, the headers per se in each standard, it changes, it evolves. So you may remember having content and then skill. You might have topic. It really is an evolving piece. Our standards have increased quite a lot. You'd be very surprised at the standards that we are held to in kindergarten, per se, and where we expect our students to have mastery, or where we expect them to have an instructional level, and maybe not be independent yet, but have a working knowledge. There's a lot packed into the standards. We spend a lot of time deconstructing and unwrapping those standards so that we can have clear understanding, that our adults can have clear understanding of what is all in that standard, so that our adults can then make it very relevant and user-friendly for our students. Those clear learning targets are incredibly important so that our students know what it is they're held to teach or to learn. And then they gauge their own learning along the way. So that's been an incredible piece. Most up-to-date standards have a lot of pieces and parts inside them. So it may immediately, a first grade standard may immediately open with an application. And you may have to look through that to say they need to tell time to the 15-minute, 30-minute, and hour. Okay? In that, in order for my student to really be able to do that, what all do they need to learn? What all they have to be able to identify 5-minute intervals. They have to be able to count by fives. They have to be able to read the face of that clock. They have to be able, there's no standard aligned to all of that. It's embedded within that standard. And so those meaty, heavy standards are sometimes a challenge, because then we have to really unpack that and really break that down. This is what we're held to teach. This is where my student will be held for mastery. But in order to get there, my child needs to be able to do this and this and this and this. I have to teach all those steps before I can teach what I'm supposed to teach.
Another thing too, are these standards, they're adapted or created through the ODE, Ohio Department of Education, or
all of our
government?
standards are board approved at the state level.
Okay.
The State Board of Education adopts on recommendation from the Ohio Department of Education.
You were talking about the clock, the time. Times are so different because, I look at your watch and you don't see, the 15 minutes. So that has to be sometimes challenging for teachers because the kids can't relate to it.
There's many different pieces
Okay.
and sometimes moving parts. And like I said, the revision process is continual. Most recently, we've seen revisions in world language, in art, in some of our technology standards. So some of those non-core areas, we've seen a lot of revision in the last 2 years. And then again, once those are state board approved, then those are shared out with local districts. And then it becomes our job locally to embed those in our teaching and learning and making sure that our teachers are knowledgeable, which sometimes then causes us to come back to professional development to make sure that they know what those new standards are, what are the changes, what's out, what am I not going to teach now because it's no longer in my grade level standard, and what's been added to my grade level standard. I've taught second grade for 15 years. I've always taught this. It's not in my standard, my grade level anymore. It went down to first or up to third. So it really is a continual process. And I hope you can see how many of these have really they blend together. So when I jokingly say to you, everything we do is about curriculum and instruction. Everything we do is about curriculum and instruction. It is truly the backbone of our district. It is what we are here to do. And we are very fortunate to have your leadership guiding. And we are very fortunate in this district to have strong administrative leaders. And we have wonderful teachers that jump right in and staff members that jump in and say, okay, this is what we need to do. This process has been lengthy. And it has been time consuming, and it has been extremely worthwhile. We have a wonderful committee that has a lot of people not afraid to speak up and not afraid to share their thoughts, and that makes us better. And it's just been a great opportunity this year to really flesh through some of these things. So I would really like to publicly thank our committee, made up of Nicole Almroth, grade 5, Jen Baer, science at the high school level, Mary Alice Espiritu from the Board of Education, Alex Gorbetz, Board of Education, Joy Hassan, intervention specialist, Sarah Lewis, parent and community member, Julie Lockyer, teacher on special assignment, Carrie Meyer, grade 6, ELA, Christine Orvetz, administrator at Ross, Aaron Parker, administrator here at FMS and parent in our district, Lori Pierce, elementary administrator, Bill Taylor, community member and a higher education peer from Terra State Community College, and Arlene Woodson as a community member. So we've had a very collective group, and I thank them. I publicly want to thank them for their time and energy and hard work throughout this year. Are there any questions regarding the curriculum management plan?
Okay. All right. Last. Okay. How will this will this parallel with the virtual? And will they still, how's that going to work for them? The students who will be
That will be attending virtually?
yes.
Everything will still align 100%. We still are held to teach the standards that our State Board of Education hands down to us. And we have board approved curriculum guides aligned at those levels. Moving forward in our Little Giant Virtual Academy for next fall that we'll initiate, we know that we'll have a new software component. We'll have a new application process. But we also know that Edgenuity is aligned to our Ohio standards. So although the pacing, the order, and the amount of time that is spent on those standards may fluctuate, the content that they're covering will be the same. And our students, whether seated or in our Little Giant Virtual Academy, will still be held accountable in those core areas, especially at the high school level when we're looking at that, to those end of course tests that they need to pass for graduation points. So there's really no change for that piece. They're still held accountable to the same criteria.
They won't be getting the exact same curriculum.
That is correct. That is correct. Same standards, same core,
Okay.
but how it's rolled out, how it is provided, the order of which it's provided, that could all vary.
One quick question, and going back to John talking about the hot topics, and I know we have community members that have watched more and more since we've been virtual and everything else. So simple question, and it's one of the hottest topics around when it comes to education. Is there anything in our curriculum revolving around critical race theory?
At this time, there is nothing in our local curriculum evolving around critical race theory, as well as the state of Ohio, the
Right.
learning standards that we are held to teach. There have been no changes at the state level.
Okay. I think it's just that way people listening, it's a clear-cut answer. There isn't anything currently. It's just that simple. There isn't any. I think too many districts kind of get wishy-washy and they just jump around and they give a vague answer. And let's just spell it out and say what it is. And there isn't anything. So our community members can know whether they're in favor of that being taught or not being in favor of that taught. Either side, it doesn't matter. Currently, right now, we have nothing as far as critical race theory goes.
Correct.
Right.
It's accurate.
Thank you.
No, I might add too, and I was going to, if I may, Denise, thank you very
Definitely.
much for your presentation. I'll wrap this
Thanks,
up, but
Denise.
well, I can take no credit for this process. This was here when I got here. So if I could, I would. I guarantee you I'd take all the credit I could. But if there's anything we do well, it's this. And Denise talked about this is kind of what we do, and it is. I mean, everything. And Mr. Amway will say it all the time. I'm about making sure you can do the teaching. I mean, that's what our support staff is for. Everything we do around here is to make sure we're teaching. And if we do anything well, it's this process. I think it's vetted, and it keeps all the surprises out, Tom, and it keeps people from getting way off into doing some things that maybe none of us knows what's going on. So this, it may seem a little rigid, but I think that rigidity, that's the wrong word. It's systemic. It's structured. There's a process, and it's in place to make sure we don't do something stupid or have somebody out doing something they shouldn't. And there's a process. Now, I'm not saying people don't do it. We're a human organization. There's somebody out there doing something stupid. I guarantee you, we are a human organization. But it won't be because we didn't do the process. We didn't have the conversation. We didn't have the people at the table who will make those decisions and ultimately come to the board fully vetted.
And it's got to be structured. I mean, kids need structure at every level. We saw
Adults
what
do too.
kids happen when there isn't structure because of the pandemic and everything goes haywire.
It's not good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, Denise. And I couldn't say enough about her department. She stays on it. And, in January, it's kind of hard to hit the brakes and get that meeting together. Well, we got to get together and get our meeting done. It'd be easy to say, we'll do that next month. Well, no, she does it. And I appreciate her tenacity to make sure that this is done and done well. So thank you very much. Any other questions for Denise on that? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett.
Thanks, Denise.
I would like to say something about
Go right ahead.
one of the exciting things about the way we do things is that many of the electives are actually developed by the staff itself. So they're excited to teach their class because they pretty much wrote the class. It's nothing that's been imposed upon them. Most of the time, it's their idea. Let's do this. As Denise said, this is a good idea. Let's try to do this. In that business class that Denise mentioned, that's a college level class. And it was developed by the instructor at his own initiative. And it just doesn't get any better than that at a high school level. And the big difference between the way things were back in the day, a long time ago,
Yes, sir. A very long time ago.
and now,
Before the earth cooled. Yes, sir.
textbooks used to really drive the instructional program. And now the textbooks really don't drive the instructional program. The curriculum itself drives the instructional program, and the textbooks are chosen to fit what we want to do. And that's good. And that's very good. But anyway, I'd like to also commend the committee, the members of which worked a lot harder at doing this than I, by all means. I was mostly a spectator. But it's a very dedicated group of people that work on this. And it's a reflection of the director's dedication to the process and the job. Because that dedication just doesn't happen magically. There has to be leadership in the department for that to happen. Okay, let's go forward with our items.
All right.
So,
Item one.
item
Very
one.
good. Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Going into our regular agenda then, we're going to try a little different avenue for our bus driver physicals. We've checked with Dr. Paul Silcox. We did vet his credentials, so he is qualified to do that. And this is just a market-driven thing. We're trying to make sure we get, once again, the best value that we can. So if I could have item 1 then for the board.
Motion to approve item 1.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price,
Second.
second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any questions regarding item 1? Roll call, please.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbett.
Yes. Motion carried. Contracts.
Yes, thank you. With item 2, this is our Northern Ohio Educational Computer. This is NOECA. This is our A site. This is a computer hub, actually, for this entire part of the state. That's a lot of money, but they are it. I mean, and that covers software for our IEPs, for our grade cards, you name it. If we do it on a computer, it involves them. So it's pricey, but it's our service. They do a fabulous job. And just coincidentally, every year I get an evaluation. They do an internal evaluation survey with the superintendents, and their marks are always in the 90s for satisfaction for all the areas. So they do a fabulous job, and they respond to our needs. So with your approval, I'd like to proceed with that.
A motion to approve item 2. Moved by Mrs. Ray,
Second.
second by Mr. Price. Any concerns regarding item 2? Roll call, please.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbett.
Yes. Motion carries. Student staff, staff matters.
Yeah, staff matters.
Contract.
Thank you, Mr. Gorbetz. Continuing on with item 3, tonight we bring forth the compensation plan for both the administrative group and also the non-unionized. You can imagine that's the group of our assistants and the support staff at the district office that are not members of the union. So last month you approved the 2 contracts with our teachers and our support staff. This then we followed the same language for them. So whatever they got, this group gets as well. So with your approval on item 3 and 4, we'll kind of get everybody covered tonight with the same agreement. Item 5, we'd like to pay Mark King to help us with our officials class. We have to have a certified official to teach the class. So in order for these students to then be able to take a test to become certified officials, this class has been a huge success with us. So with your approval, we'll continue that with item 5.
Okay, could we have a motion to approve items 3, 4, and 5?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price,
Second.
second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any questions regarding those 3 items?
Denise, I don't want to put you on the spot, but didn't we add a few sports to that course as well?
We did. Actually, we
The
will
officials
be,
course, I mean.
we will be, students next school year will have the opportunity, I believe it is football, wrestling, basketball, baseball.
Okay.
They're actually going to run next year in quarter length classes so that in their semester of the course, they will actually walk away with 2 certifications and moving forward.
And if you've ever tried to get refs right now, it's
Yeah.
very, 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 very difficult.
Slim pickings.
Slim pickings, tough job, and it's an aging group too, and not a lot of young people going into it. So we're struggling. So this is our fill the social need course. So. Thank you, Alex.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbett.
Yes. Motion carried.
All right. Item 6, resignations. This is one walk-on there. Make sure I get it properly. We're walking on John Clegg in item 6. Also then Robert Chevalier, Kara Kaufman, and Edward Baptista. So we'll add John Clegg to that list in item 6. Then in item 7, these appointments, we have Alyssa Fry, counselor, should be at Krogan. Juliana Ixman, a counselor at Otis. Turning the page, Ashley Coleman. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Item 7. Okay, we are going on. Make sure I didn't skip items there. Ashley Coleman, then as custodial 1. Then adding our walk-on items, item 7, we have Shauna Petaway and Amanda Williams. Also then support substitute Linda Claycomb. Last Friday was Linda's last day with me. I'm hobbling along without my right arm, but we're making it do. Had Gina today. We're going to do great. But that makes official. Linda can come back and help us if we need a little help. So.
Awesome.
Okay, we have a motion to approve items 6, 7, 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
Moved by Mrs. Ray. Second by Mrs. Spiritu. Any questions regarding those items?
I would like to point out, if I may, and I hate to interrupt again, but I'm impressed. You don't always get the staff member that would come to a board meeting willing to be recognized by the board. You're about to approve Amanda Williams as our middle school ED teacher. Amanda has joined us this evening. We're very excited to have her. I know Mrs. Parker is thrilled to have her. And it just means a lot professionally for you to be here, Amanda. Thank you very much. A very, very good first impression, I might add.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
One quick question. Mr. Chevalier leaving as an assistant principal. Do we
Yes.
have, we don't have a replacement?
No, I'm going to try to absorb that one, Mr. Price. It's one of those things that I think I've talked to Mr. Zeller. We think we can do it. We'll shuffle some duties, add a few things to some other staff, and try to eat that one. It's one of those things our preliminary results from our staffing showed maybe a little high in the assistant principal area, so I'm just trying to be as proactive as possible. And we're not as big as we used to be.
Right.
So we're going to see if we can do without.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes, motion carried. Okay, curriculum.
All right. As Denise alluded to earlier, we have some samples available here for these next few items. With your approval tonight, we'll adopt a world history book from Savas Learning Company. We will adopt a United States government book from McGraw-Hill, an economics and personal finance from the Cengage Learning. And at the top of the next page, business foundations from McGraw-Hill as well. So with your approval, we'll get those on the ordering block.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve items 8, 9, 10, and 11?
So move.
Moved by Mrs. Espiritu. We'll have Mr. Price seconded.
Okay. Sorry.
Are there any questions regarding our textbook adoption? Roll call, please.
Ms. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes. Motion carries. Fiscal items, report and recommendations of the treasurer.
I actually reached out to one of the members from the Fair School Funding work group this week, and they did say that they're going to pass the state is going to pass the Fair School Funding, which is a benefit for Fremont City Schools, it looks like. The only con was that there was some expansion to Ed Choice. So there was a little bit going on there with that lovely situation.
Of course there is.
Of course there is.
Tonight I have for approval some
Speak up a little.
fiscal 21 permanent appropriations. We had some changes for the end of the year, and that's the handout. That's the spreadsheet with the purple that I brought tonight. And then item 13, we have the property, fleet, and liability insurance for next year from USI. And insurance and investments and Weicker Agency. We had to look at for this coming year. Currently, we don't cover the old high school, so we have to put in there not to exceed so that we can include the amount that's going to come on when the high school's finished. So we have the renewal, but it's going to go up a little bit come November. So we just want to make sure that was taken care of in that dollar amount. And then item 14 is the contract with Golden Gate Financial Services. And then the walk-on of item 15 is temporary appropriations for fiscal 22. We're going to set those at 35% for fiscal 21 expenditures. So that'll get us up and running for next year, starting July 1.
Is that item on?
That's the walk-on item.
That's item 15. I like it goes.
It's June 28th.
No.
There he is. Yep. I'll pay for it.
Do we have a motion to approve items 12 through 15?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price,
Second.
by Mrs. Ray. Item 15, is that a typical amount for temporary appropriation?
Yeah, that's usually just to get us through July through September, and then we'll set permanent in September.
Are any other questions regarding those items? Roll call, please.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Ray, Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Corbett.
Yes. Carries. Board member communications, information requests, Mr. Price.
Denise, thank you for coming in with all the information. That just gives us more so that as community members ask us, we can show we're doing our due diligence as a district. Like you said, our first and foremost priority is to teach the kids. Everything else comes after that. So thank you very much and to everybody on the committee for all the hard work. That's not an easy task where you sit down for an hour and fix and change everything. So I'm sure it got pretty tedious, even just with verbiage when it comes to state and federal requirements and dotting the I's and crossing the T's and everything. So thank you for everyone involved for that. So thank you, Amanda, for showing up for a board meeting, for your hiring of that. That, like Mr. Detweiler said, that does make a very good first impression. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for joining the staff here at Fremont. So good luck with everything. So this next school year. So other than that, it's just summertime. Bruce, how is, one quick question.
Yes.
How is the summer school program going?
Very well, yes. Denise is probably more in touch than I at this point.
Huh?
But she actually had to cover the building for a couple of days, didn't you?
I did. I got to be administrator on duty. It was so fun.
Next, you'll be driving a bus.
Careful.
Summer programs are actually going very well. If you remember, we have advanced all of our offerings this summer. So we have children at Lutz K3. Grades 4-5 are at Otis. Our middle school program is coming to an end right now here. Our Ross High School program, our credit recovery program is up and running. We have more students than what we had last year, which is very appropriate. And we want to make sure that our students have the opportunity to make up some of those credits that they lost. They are getting their feet wet with our new software program, Edgenuity, as well as our staff. It's a great opportunity for them to get to know it in the summertime a little bit more. We will have in July a OST retake. summer program
Okay.
for those students that need to retake some of those end of course tests. And then we will also have here at the middle school a math camp that we are doing in collaboration with Heidelberg University for seventh grade students. Students exiting seventh grade here at the middle school. That'll be a really nice enrichment opportunity in math. So we have some
Numbers
great
of
things.
students have been, I mean, I know that everyone was hoping that parents and kids would take advantage of that to get kind of caught back up with the swing of things. So
Yes, at the elementary level, we have a great number of students
Good.
in both buildings, to the point where we may have a larger class, but we have a lot of kids that are coming every day and really
Great.
doing a nice job. So,
Good.
yeah, there's some really good highlights. Mr. Matt is building and planting and using some high level math with his grade 4 and 5 students. So if you're out and about and want to swing by Otis Elementary, there's some really cool things happening.
thank you.
Yes, thanks.
That's all.
Right.
Thanks, Denise, for your awesome presentation. I was asking questions, but I have seen what you do.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you and your hard work and keeping us on top of things and things moving along. Thanks to Amanda for coming. Welcome. And just happy that things are moving along. We're out of the crisis. Things are more relaxed. I was the only one that came with a mask today. So, so people are feeling better about life. Anyway, so yes, that things are moving along.
This is spiritual.
I also like to thank Denise for joining us today and going over the curriculum. And I agree, it's a great committee. And I'm with Alex over here. I didn't contribute as much as the other ones did, but it was great dialogue going back and forth and just seeing just the dedication to improve the plan. So it's a great committee. Yes, and I also like to thank Amanda for coming in and joining us at our board meeting.
I would like to thank Henry for being here tonight. I'd also like to thank Henry for lifting my spirits whenever I see you. I also, again, would like to commend our committee, CQCC, and Denise's leadership. We have, in my opinion, one of the more dynamic curricular offering set in the area, maybe in this area of the state. Our students avail themselves of the opportunity. It's there. And I'd like to welcome our new middle school teacher who's here today. You're in an area that's near and dear to my heart. And I know just by you being here, I know you'll do just fine. And I'd like to thank Tom for giving me my comic relief of the day. Watching him race into the building
Yeah, he can move, can he?
in the middle of a thunderstorm.
Cat quick. We have cameras on the outside.
We do have cameras. We do have cameras, as a matter of fact.
It might be worth
That
going
might
back
be worth it. That might give me some hits.
or some free dinners.
Bribery.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing item I, considering the purchase of property for public purposes.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price,
Second.
second by Mrs. Espiritu.
We will not be coming back for any action,
Nothing
right?
coming back. Roll call, please.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes. Motion carries.